Next on Currents News, Brett Kavanaugh is on the brink. Senate support for sending him to the Supreme Court grew today. A key procedural vote went his way, and a closely watched senator said she's a yes. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio with Pope Francis recently to discuss with the pontiff a new major initiative. The bishop will be here to go into the deep about his audience.
I'm Jim Harfman, and coming up tonight, how ethics plays a role in the workplace. I speak to one mechanic who says that honesty is the nuts and bolts of his policy.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son.
Pets of all kinds are blessed at St. Francis College in Brooklyn in celebration of two saints. The news starts right now.
The yeas are 51, the noes are 49. The motion is agreed to.
It was close, but now the way is clear for a final vote. Hi, I'm Michelle Powers. Liz Faublas is off tonight. Two big developments in the Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court saga, both in his favor, and he could be confirmed as the newest justice as soon as tomorrow. Mary Maloney reports the very latest on the developing story.
Senator Susan Collins is a yes. The Republican senator siding with her party, announcing she will vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court.
Mr. President, I will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
The most contentious confirmation of a Supreme Court nominee in decades has taken dramatic twists and turns. Multiple women accused Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct.
They're having fun at my expense,
prompting Kavanaugh to issue a passionate denial to the claims.
You have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy.
And the FBI to conduct an additional background check. In the midst of the roar from protesters, today only one voice echoed on the Senate floor.
The motion is agreed to.
By the slimmest of margins, senators advanced Kavanaugh's confirmation to a final vote this weekend. But even with Collins' decision, Kavanaugh's fate isn't sealed. Some senators could change their minds in the final moments.
Do you plan to vote yes tomorrow?
So, unless something big changed, I don't see what would.
And Vice President Mike Pence could be forced to break a tie. The importance of the Supreme Showdown isn't lost on senators or the country. If Kavanaugh is confirmed, he will replace retired Justice Anthony Kennedy, often considered the swing vote on the Supreme Court. The committed conservative would potentially shift the balance of the court to the right for generations. Now, Washington waits and wonders what's next. In Washington, I'm Mary Maloney reporting.
A key figure in the Chile sex abuse scandals refused to answer any questions in court. Cardinal Ricardo Azadi is Chile's highest-ranking cleric and the Archbishop of Santiago. Prosecutors suspect him of covering up clerical sex abuse. In this week's hearing, he asserted his right to remain silent while saying he expects the case to be dismissed. Prosecutors in at least 13 U.S. states are investigating allegations of sex abuse linked to the church. Florida is the latest. Critics have complained that until now, only the church is being looked at. Florida's Attorney General Pam Bondi is using her office to investigate everywhere.
We're not limiting this to the Catholic Church. If you have been abused by any youth organization in the past, any group, any school, we want you to come forward. And that's when we'll be able to find out how widespread this is.
Bondi is issuing subpoenas to all Florida dioceses, and the bishops are pledging full cooperation. There is no doubt that these are testing times for Catholics. Father Jack Wall is the president of Catholic Extension. His organization has kicked off a drive to highlight all the good reasons why people are proud to be Catholic. He joins us now. Father Jack, you're calling this a movement, inviting Catholics everywhere to share their stories using the hashtag #WhyI'mCatholic. How did this movement come about?
Well, first of all, Michelle, I think the powerful thing about church is it is a movement. It's people that really believe in our faith and the mystery of Christ at work in our lives. And even these dark and challenging times, we're meant to be a people of hope. This is not Pollyannish. It's not trying to avoid the dark times that we're in and the great challenges they're facing. But we need to come together, I believe, and in a very hope-filled way, develop the courage to change the things that need to be changed. And to have that kind of hope, you have to kind of ground yourself. Where's my hope grounded? And I think when we ask that question, why am I Catholic? We begin to realize that there's a convictional level that God is up to something even in the darkest times of our lives. And I think when we reach into that place together as a movement, we can begin to really face the challenges ahead and change the way we're doing things. The church needs to change.
And now you have some answers to those questions. Let's look at this. Let's see why some people are Catholic. Here's one. Being Catholic has given me a huge family all over the world. Another, I'm Catholic because there is a God and I love to teach my faith beliefs and values to others. Just one more. The beauty of our church is our symbol of love for the faith and the Lord. How does a campaign like this make an impact on the difficult feelings that people are feeling right now? You said the church has to change. What has to change?
Well, first of all, I think the comments that you're hearing are people that are going to the deepest parts of their life, and from that deep downness, they trust in the mystery of God at work. And our God is always calling us to a deeper way of being faithful and deeper way of being Catholic. And the Catholic Church has had a long history of people living the gospel. And this is a moment, I think, when people have to stand up and give witness to their faith, not in a Pollyannish way, but in a way that constantly says, this is what I believe, this is what I'm convinced God is doing, this is what God is asking us to do to become more deeply convinced of our faith, and to understand that that faith calls for change, that we're meant to more deeply be disciples of Christ.
And how hard is it to do that right now? As a priest, what feelings do you have? How hard is it to say, I'm Catholic, this is what I believe, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm proud?
Yeah. Well, I'm absolutely convinced that there's different moments in the church, and this is one of the challenging times. This is when faith means the most. It's you can't cruise this moment as church. So you have to face the realities that were given to us. This is the place that the church is right now. And there's always been reform movements. Yesterday was the Feast of St. Francis, and look what he did. 800 years ago, in the impact of his courage and his faith and his vision of touching the lives of the poor and seeing the face of Christ in the poor, and bringing this sense of hope into a very challenging moment in history. And if you look at the great saints of history that's happened, I think this movement is calling for a lay movement, the call for the witness of all of us as baptized people to give witness to our faith. So these little vignettes of people saying, this is what I'm convinced of, it gives hope to all. And we need that kind of hope, because hope is what drives change. And you can't have hope without a deep conviction of that God is up to something beautiful and good and new in the way we're being called to be Catholics today.
So, Father Jack, really quickly, you are hopeful for the future.
Absolutely. And as President of Catholic Extension, I've had this great opportunity to go to the poorest places, people living with very dire circumstances, and yet their faith tells them they're more than their circumstances. And it gives them aspiration, it gives them hope, and it gives them confidence that God is up to something beautiful and good in our lives. And we must trust that, but the trust calls for new ways of being Catholic.
Father Jack, thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
The important summit about young people that the Pope has convened is now tackling some big topics. Sean Richardson has the latest from the Vatican.
The third and fourth meetings of the Synod have raised other social, political and religious issues that weigh on young people. The Archbishop of Sydney, for example, explained the challenge for the Church to regain its credibility after the abuses and cover-ups.
We are so ashamed of what happened in that terrible chapter in our history. Not just that church people did these terrible, harmful things to young people, but that church leaders often responded so poorly.
Manuel Ocho Gaviria from Panama gave examples of the cultural and even racial limits that also affect other members of the church. For example, in my diocese, it is a majority Afro-descendant diocese. In Latin America, being young, female and black makes it even more difficult for decision-making. From my point of view, I recognize that we have problems with the liturgy, with the homilies. It is necessary to change all that so people feel more attracted and young people are involved, accept responsibilities and are leaders in the church and pastoral life. The question of premarital relationships was addressed, which showed how difficult it is to explain morality without young people feeling judged. One of the Synod Fathers recalled that sometimes young people leave the church because they don't feel heard. In Rome, Sean Richardson, Currents News.
Days after the powerful earthquake and tsunami hit Indonesia, the death toll continues to grow. Nearly 1,500 people have been confirmed dead, and thousands more continue to wait for help. Caritas Indonesia is on the ground there and says extensive damage is cutting off relief efforts to remote areas. So bad that volunteers are trying to make their way on foot just to bring basic needs to people. The director of Caritas Indonesia promises that they will continue to do all that they can. The bill that would legalize abortion on demand in Ireland is coming before Parliament. The legislation, the first of its kind in the country, follows a referendum in May where less than half of the electorate, but almost 2/3 of those who turned out, voted to remove the country's protection for the unborn. The bill must be passed by both Parliament and the Irish Senate before it officially becomes law. A 25-year-old woman and a doctor from Congo can now call themselves Nobel Peace Prize winners. The highest of honors was awarded today to Nadia Murad, a Yazidi Iraqi who was once held captive by the Islamic State for her work against sexual violence. And she is no stranger to Pope Francis. The duo met last year at the Vatican. Dr. Dennis Mukwege, the other recipient, treats women who have been tortured in war. There's a lot more news headed your way. Car mechanics ranked near the bottom of the list in a survey about ethics. Next, a Bushwick mechanic explains why high ethical standards are vital to his work. Bishop DiMarzio will be here in just a few moments with the first-hand story of his meeting with Pope Francis about a major new plan for housing. The animals received their blessings at Brooklyn's St. Francis College. Do you have a story idea? Is something happening in your parish we should know about? We want to hear from you. Keep this email handy. newstips@desalesmedia.org. Email us. We'll be right back. In an often cutthroat world, business profits sometimes crowd out ethics. In a new survey, auto mechanics didn't rate highly when it comes to the business standards of their industry. Currents News' Tim Harfman joins us with the story of a mechanic in Bushwick who bucks that trend.
Americans rated mechanics as being honest and ethical only about half the time. While most auto repairmen may be wheeling and dealing to make a quick buck, one Brooklynite believes honesty is his best policy. Felix Rosado owns this auto repair shop in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And for him, business is not about the big bucks.
Honesty is everything.
But not all mechanics follow that same motto. In a nationwide poll conducted by Gallup, 22 occupations were rated high, average, and low on whether the businesses were honest and ethical. Only 32% of Americans judged mechanics as high or very high. Just over half, 53%, said mechanics were truthful, and 14% ranked mechanic standards as low or very low. But Felix says he's putting the brakes on the stereotype.
A lot of people are in this for the money, for the quick dollar. We're in it for the long haul.
Customers like Philip Rodriguez appreciate the honesty because when it comes to getting scammed by other mechanics, he's tired of it.
You need someone you could trust, and that's the biggest problem in the world.
Felix remembers how one customer, visiting from out of town, was taken advantage of by a competitor.
They were trying to charge her $600, and I told her she didn't need all those repairs. All she needed was an oil change and an air filter.
And how much did it wind up costing them?
$60.
Father Frank Mann is a Brooklyn priest at the parish down the block from Felix's garage and says honesty and ethics is not only important in the workplace, but it's essential in life.
Everybody has to make a living, pay the bills, so that's not an issue. The issue is, how do I make the money? What am I doing? What's my motive?
Felix is a parishioner at the nearby St. Martin de Tours Church and keeps his faith in mind while in the shop.
I feed my family doing this. I pay my bills. I don't want to hurt anybody.
It makes me feel a little better knowing that at least if he is doing anything wrong, he has to answer to a higher authority.
Felix charges $85 an hour for labor. He says that's cheaper than other mechanics in his area because he wants to save his customers money.
So the auto mechanics didn't do so well on this, but what occupation did? Who's the most trustworthy?
Nurses did for the 16th consecutive year. More than 8 in 10 Americans describe their ethics as being very high or high.
Okay. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio traveled to the Vatican last month and briefed the Pope on an important initiative involving housing and other religions. Tonight, the bishop goes into the deep about the papal audience and the project with the tablet's editor emeritus, Ed Wilkinson.
Bishop DiMarzio was recently in Rome, and he was meeting there with a group of Buddhists, and they were talking about housing in the United States. And Bishop wanted to tell us a little bit about that. What was that meeting all about?
Well, it started back several years ago when Cardinal Turan, who was the cardinal in charge of interreligious dialogue, wanted to have a project that might bring Catholics and Buddhists together, emphasizing the encyclical Laudato Si on the environment. So the project was put out to dioceses, said, can you come up with a project where there's a green housing project, where it's environmentally sound and can be replicated. And so 3 dioceses responded that were chosen: Los Angeles, Chicago, and Brooklyn. And again, there were representatives of the diocese and of the Buddhist communities in those cities that came to Rome. We had a meeting one day at the Interreligious Dialogue, the dicastery, they call it. And then the next day, we had the audience with the Holy Father. And there's a beautiful picture that was in the tablet of all of the people together. We have Buddhists from Brooklyn who were part of it. Mostly, there were 2 Buddhist nuns who were really part of the delegation from Brooklyn. And it gives that interreligious cooperation, because when we're talking about other religions, we have to start at a level that's understandable. We have to talk first. We can pray at some ways together, even if our concept of God is very different. And then Turan wanted to have some service that we might show together that we are united.
So what's our part in this project then?
Well, our part here, actually, Catholic Charities is the sponsor for the housing. We have 2 sites in mind. It may be in Astoria or maybe the former site of Our Lady of Loretto Church. We're not sure which one will be the better one. But it will be, again, a green housing project. It will be aimed at senior citizens and formerly homeless senior citizens.
When we say a green project, I mean, we're talking about ecology, and you said it's in line with the Pope's encyclical.
Right.
What does that mean, though, in terms of practicality? I mean,
well, it may be that you may have the solar panels on the roof, some kind of recycling of water. I'm not sure, again, they have to get to the project, but that's the whole point, that you do want to have that as homage to the idea of Laudato Si.
Do you see this as a move forward in terms of maybe joint projects in other areas?
Well, it certainly could be. You know, again, ecumenically, when we're dealing with other Christians, the best way we can foster ecumenism is to work together. Interreligious, now they haven't had that many projects like that, but in our diocese, where you have the presence of Buddhists, Muslims, so many other religions, doing things together bring about fraternity, understanding, and furthers the religious dialogue.
So some nice video on currents of you and the Holy Father exchanging greetings. Looked very cordial. What did he say to you?
Well, he's thanked me for coming, obviously, and was interested to see what we were doing. And when he spoke to the delegation, we had a picture at the end of the audience. He said in heavily German accent in English, "Thank you for your work." So it was something they all heard him. It was nice.
And what language did he speak to you in?
Well, I spoke in Italian to him. I thought he'd be more comfortable than trying to speak in English or even Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what happened.
When you're in Rome and you're there to see the Holy Father and you have these meetings, do you get a chance to see some of our other Brooklynites there? Do you stop at the seminaries or things like that?
Oh, yes. I was at the seminary. We had one night where we had all the Brooklyn people together, which was nice. Nice meal.
Yeah. Do we have men studying in Rome right now?
Well, we do. We have Father Patrick Dorelius, who's doing canon law. We have Father Kung Pham, who's works in one of the dicasteries, and Monsignor Sarno, and we even had somebody who was at the sabbatical program, Father Holcomb. So we had a nice night.
Now let's not forget Father Kush. Father Kush,
I forgot. He was the host. Oh my goodness. He even writes for us.
He said it was a delight having you in Rome. So that's the latest on the Bishop's trip to Rome, and we're throwing it back to you.
Thank you, Ed and Bishop DiMarzio.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Brooklynites brought their furry and scaly friends to St. Francis College today. The gathering meant to celebrate the feast days of St. Francis of Assisi and St. Clare. The animals were blessed by the Franciscan brothers at the college, something Catholics were grateful for.
I just want her to be blessed and safe and just the same blessed as I am, so same thing.
I bought him because I love my dog and I want him to live forever.
Some hardworking officers from the NYPD Canine Unit were also blessed during the gathering. For Brooklynites unable to bring their furry friends to the college, photos of the pets were blessed. First Lady Melania Trump visited Kenya today. Mrs. Trump arrived at Nairobi National Park, where she highlighted animal conservation efforts and learned the steps the East African nation is taking to conserve elephants and rhinos. She also visited with children at an orphanage to watch them as they performed at the Nairobi National Theater. Still to come on Currents News, news about aspirin, cancer, and women. And I'll have the story of an inspirational child and the police officers who are helping him in a challenging time. We'll be right back. An aspirin a day could keep the doctor away, and that's at least for women. A new study finds that taking a low dose of aspirin each day may help lessen the chances of getting ovarian cancer. But there's a caveat. Researchers say this doesn't apply to those standard dose aspirins. They are almost 3 times too much, and frequent use of non-aspirin pills like ibuprofen might actually increase the chance of cancer. For one little boy, just being alive is a miracle. But when his heroes give him a special ride to his final cancer treatment, that's a dream. I'm Batman. Batman also goes by Liam.
Liam has been in treatment for high-grade glioma for over a year now. He just is finishing chemo today. He understands what's going on. He knows his treatment. He knows the prognosis somewhat. He was only given a year. He wasn't supposed to make it till April. And here he is, and he's just going.
He's a happy kid with a dream.
I want to be a policeman when I grow up.
He even has a favorite. Police officer Dan and Liam have struck up a friendship over the last year.
To see how strong he is as an individual is something that I admire. He's faced a lot of adversity through this, and he's a strong individual.
On Thursday morning, Officer Dan and members of the Penobscot County Sheriff's Department gave Liam a ride to his appointment. Before they left, an exchange of gifts.
Oh, I got a present for you.
It's pretty exciting when the young man gets to get in a vehicle and use the radio, and again, just he inspired us, and we thought we were here for him, and I think he's done so much for our community and for all of us, and it was just a blessing to be part of it.
Liam's family calls him an inspiration. They and the Penobscot Police Department are cherishing every moment God continues to give them with Liam. That is Currents News. Thank you for joining us. I'm Michelle Powers. Set your DVR to record this program so that you never miss it, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.